It's a pleasure to be here with Sherrod Blakely, a digital media reporter for Comcast SportsNet, covering the Boston Celtics. Thank you for being on the show.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
And now I have to begin the interview on a little bit of sad note. The Celtics obviously lost, and now it's looking like they aren't going to make it to the next round. But overall, were you surprised just that they got to the playoffs and with the expectations kind of low, how they've been pretty tremendous overall this season?
Well, it just seems from the very beginning of this season that this team was not going to be a playoff team. Everything changed when they made the trade for Isaiah Thomas. At that point, they were starting to gain some traction being a competitive team, but when they acquired Isaiah Thomas at the trade deadline, they went from being just a competitive team to a potential playoff team. But the way they were able to really come together with a lot of pieces that didn't really fit elsewhere, but for whatever reason, they come to Boston and things just kind of come together and they start playing really good basketball. They get into the playoffs and they made a lot of believers out of people who looked at that roster and just could only cringe at the thought of that team, playing well enough to where they were a team in the postseason.
In the past, you've covered the championship contender Big Three Celtics team, also the NBA championship Detroit Pistons in 2004. How special was it to look back and cover these great teams?
When you're in that type of situation, you almost take it for granted that the team that you're covering is going to be really good because they were so good for so many years. And when I left Detroit and came to Boston, it was the same. My first year, they got to the NBA Finals. And while it was kind of a big deal around here because it was their second trip since the Big Three formed, it was the norm for me because I was used to dealing with teams who understood how to navigate their way through the playoffs.
You broke the blockbuster trade of Allen Iverson coming to Detroit along with other big NBA stories. What goes into breaking a big headliner story?
Well, the one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that even though for that moment it's a big deal, there are so many different steps that go into getting in position to break that type of story. There's an infinite number of people who in some way, shape, or form can give you some guidance, some help, some tips that help you do your job better. But the one thing I would say that has helped me deal with those type of stories is just confidence. You have to believe that you can do this, and you can't be deterred by anything anyone else says.
What's the best part of your job?
That's a really good question, because there's a lot about my job I like. I would probably say the memories that when I was first getting started, I didn't really think a whole lot of, but the fact that I was there when UConn won its first national championship. I was there when the Pistons won a title. Celtics, just great games. When I do think about them, it makes me feel really happy and proud and privileged.
The Syracuse Newhouse School of Journalism, they only accept 350 out of the 4,000 applications they received.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a little fact I looked up. What's it like to actually be a graduate from there?
I remember my first communications class like it was yesterday. There was a room with about 115 of us, and it's just a huge, ginormous auditorium. And you're 17, 18-year-old freshman, and you're looking around, and you don't know whether you're next to the next president of CBS or Comcast or NBC, or whether this guy is going to be this awesome news reporter for BBC or whatever. You just never really, it doesn't hit you until you leave and you realize that all these people that you went to school with, they're doing really amazing things.
After you finish your reporting career, you've hinted at possibly teaching. What would it be like, and what would it mean to you to teach an aspiring journalist or an upcoming, being a mentor?
The mentor thing, I've been doing that for a long time. I've got a lot of people I have mentored, many of which you see when you flip on ESPN or flip on Comcast. That part of it, I'm more than comfortable with. The thing that gets me is I want people who want this. I had one professor where we had to cover a city hall meeting, and there must have been like maybe 25, 30 of us there, and I think I asked maybe 85% of the questions. And I was the first one to go up to one of the council persons and speak with them. And to me, that's just what you're supposed to do. That lesson really hit home to me when I was graduating, and my professors would tell me these stories about things that they saw I did, and I didn't really think a whole lot about it at the time. I was just doing my job. The job that I wanted, I had when I was 23, and that was covering Duke basketball in ACC. It really doesn't get a whole lot better than that. The way I wound up in Boston is just completely bizarre and crazy. The Celtics were playing the Pistons in the playoffs. Comcast was looking for some folks to do some on-air work, to the visitors' perspective. And they had me on, I did a couple hits, and then a couple years later they said, you know, we got a job, are you interested? That's the one thing I always tell young people, is to prepare yourself for anything and everything. Because you never know when opportunity is going to literally be standing in front of you. And you have really two choices. You either grab it or you look the other way.
Once again, I want to thank you for being on the show, and we're going to send it back to the desk.